Hi, Carine. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Harry.
There you are. Thank
James.
you. Good to see you. We have two superb poets with us today, Beth Ruscio and Carine Topal. Carine will read first. Carine Topal, born and raised in New York City, earned an MA from New York University. For more than 25 years, Carine has worked with emotionally disturbed children and over the years anthologized the poetry of hundreds of special needs children and teens. When speaking of writing poetry, Carine considers the act of writing an extraordinary vehicle that has the power to create the music of language, the rhythm, the cadence of everyday stories. Poetry opens doors and invites others in. It is a way of seeing the astonishing in the ordinary. Carine has published 5 collections of poetry, the last entitled In Order of Disappearance, published by the Pacific Coast Poetry Series. Carine lives by the sea and in the Southern California desert with her husband, Renee. She conducts poetry workshops in the South Bay. Prayers and remembrances are abundant in Carine Topal's poetry. She has a deep connection with her ancestors. She writes with great clarity. There's a sacredness and a luminosity in her writing. Her poetry has touched me deeply. Here's a brilliant poet, Carine Topal.
Oh, thank you, Harry. I don't know who she is. Thank you so much. Thank you, Harry, for all your efforts in bringing poets to poetry and poetry to the masses, the East Coast, the West Coast, and everything in between. Really, everyone so appreciates it. And to my dear friend Beth Ruscio for bringing me into Harry's fold. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone who's here. We can't see anyone, but I'm hoping that my New York contingent is here from upstate and downstate and the city. So thank you for taking your time out to hear my work and Beth's work. Thank you so much. I'm going to begin with a poem entitled Though It Is Summer, We Cover You in Overcoats. And this is a poem for Frank O'Hara. On his gravestone, there is an epitaph written by Allen Ginsberg. And it says, grace to be born and live as variously as possible. And so Frank did. To love something beautiful should be enough. Should be. Exquisite are your vague blue eyes, caught in the delicate summer light of Cherry Grove, heat pounding itself down to the shallows. Frank, it is July of your 40th year. You were born in a decade of secret clubs, hushed by laws. And who doesn't adore you as you arrive on Fire Island, all that shot glass love, all that love in the same sun as that beautiful man smoking Luckies on a chaise. In a landscape of no trees where the wind blows the grass back hard, the seafront calls you and you ramble from our cottage toward the dunes, sand traffic ahead and in a hurry. It was only hours ago that you tonic your drink with good friends. When we heard that you'd been struck by a Jeep, we all ran toward the horde of mostly summer tourists gathered where you lay, still and pale, your eyes cloudy, sharded glass in the sun and blood in the sand. We knew nothing about shock, the blood that mixes with bile, the bleeding, but we knew to keep you warm. You mislaid in the glint of a large orange sun. The last of you, last of the bagatelles, of the museum now emptying its oils and exhibits, last of your close calls. Though it is summer, we cover you in overcoats. We depart bewildered, head to the hospital, and you, unbodied, still fetching in that blue crew neck, a silver bracelet with a broken catch at your wrist. This is for my son, a very large thing. The biggest is a heartbreak, a heart packed with impulse, clamoring aorta's great throb, while breath sputters with false hope and hunger. So large the want, so ample the claim, no cure with powder or pills. Listen, things break, weather rises. It's Tuesday, I've tried everything. I've trafficked in motherhood, burned sage and prayed, played a dirge. I know the bottom down to the lime, never touch of cheek or jowl and clutch and the pleading song of absence. It's getting late. The world is filled with blood and treasures. This strange red heart, its faint light. This next poem I wrote for my husband, Renee, but I'm dedicating it today to a friend who lives upstate New York, to Ken and his wife, Kristen. Pork pie, as in the pork pie hat. With all his motherfucking friends drunk outside, he was the one with the hat who walked into the lobby. I wanted to move him with my backstory. Wanted to know his. Where was he born? What does he think of me? So I circled him anonymously, a slim, lit cigarette dangling between my lips, muttering proverbs, hoping he'd catch on and tell me what I wanted. Fixed on his own heat, he moved like vague desire. It was the color of fog. Everything in the room disappeared but his gold signet pinky ring. What looked like a diamond twinkled in the center. We were co-wandering in circles when we locked eyes. When I say he was smiling at me, when I say he smiled, I was sure we had a moment. In my movie, he was that sweet machine, a hummer, a whistler. I couldn't get close enough as he stirred a fresh drink with his finger, looking up at me, licked it with a night gall of a Palmino right there in the Algonquin Hotel. No, I was a sparrow turning over on its wings, mimicking the scent of morning nectar, a faint scent relegated to my throat and tongue, which by this time was tied. I was between bliss and embezzlement, tired, unable to upright myself. This was going nowhere. Like the plummet of sudden love, I fell to my little knees without the flair to make him stay. With false hope fitting to a piece of charisma he was about to leave behind. I let him go, laying low in the glimmer of his light. It was quite a night. Changing subjects entirely, you might remember Imelda Marcos and her fabulous secretary, Loretta Sacramento, whose name was just a poem on its own. So this is a poem not for her, but admonishing her, I suppose. It was as predictable as October, or the storm after the rhapsody. I know ecstasy when I see it. There's a swarm of poison trees along shore, and before you flank the pastures, searching for seeds and investigate the night rain, and we thought we had it all covered. Poof, fire in the pocket. We're in a country of vigilance, which is not what we swam for. But it was either that or sink. Imagine the furor, as though I'd asked Imelda for a pair of heels. You know, from the 3,000 racked on the backs of her people. What if we walked into that dark warren of passageways? And how could we not touch the sweat of her people? I never thought to size her up before. Those rose eyes of hers, like low-lying islands in the time of typhoons. She vaunting, heavy-footed in a bulletproof bra along the promenade, sinking hired guns, fleeing unrest. What of the red-vented cockatoos and the babblers and the fruit dove, all that coastal beauty? What of the beach forest of inbreeding and dis-ease, the hogs, the horses, our sins and yours? The promise of what? Brimming in the bowls of an empire. Every small want, the newly naked, their every limb, the runes of bones, while the kingdom pretends to have nothing, which makes no difference to the starving loyals. When one grows more narrow and selfish, one must get down to the troubled waterfront, the city gutters, and breathe what the people breathe until we mean something to someone other than ourselves. This is a poem in the voice of, you might call it a persona poem, in the voice of my friend Henry, who passed away not long ago from early onset dementia. And this is also for his wife, Amy. I am not here for dementia. I was once that kind of boy, open-handed, heat cuffed at the sleeve with my heart, seeking the last of everything big-boned and brutal, as if a god had foraged for grievance and found me, as if the sparks and flame, as if the many-faced tasted the spirits and caved. I wanted for half of everything, the foot that fell forward, loose change tumbled to the gutter, the last of the wisteria planted, tender things like that. Not the brain and complicated ruin, not the fist getting ready, not my body, a scrap of waning, sealing itself against the presence of time. That which heckled me, on the hunt for a number or a name. I was once that kind of boy, the pleasure of privately wrestling with God or my red-haired wife, the keys by the door, the dogs in the yard, my 2 girls. Look, here comes someone I love. The Tennessee waltz playing in the other room where the rest of us dance. I tell you, I remember my wife taking me so away. I didn't know myself. And within that memory, her limbs, I used to climb at night, her cheek to my skin, my small soul fallen right out of language. I can point to where it hurts, my memory starved, my smaller body bewildered, and I cannot, for the life of me, find my way back. This is for my mother, an early Mother's Day poem. The Crows of Dresden. My mother dreaded anything with a beak. Eagles and falcons were no exception. When the windows were open and a house sparrow flew in, she ran. She ran for the door, the fields out front, and the forest behind our house. The earth filled with feathers. My mother fretted. She shuddered with coughs. I ran to soothe her, but in her head birds circled. Flocks did wrong. Any head under wing left mother open-jawed, dried-mouthed. The raven, the hawk, even the black-capped chickadee with its common coo, coo. I yelled for father, who came with a broom. The earth filled with caws and coos. Mother flailed her arms like a wide-winged backyard bird. I held her tight and whispered, Mother, the black crows of Dresden are gone. The dark-beaked creatures like the men in long coats and black boots, 1938, are long gone. Ravens and crows lining your home on Ubnerstrasse, picking at bits of Jews, marching on a street you once thought of as home. All gone. Oh, this poem is for my father, who taught me how to love music. Threadbare, we are homesick. After the war, the world is small again. Enough has survived to start a country. For miles, as far as the eyes take you, towns hardly alive tilt on the sand. Stop trains wait for something to move them. The air is thick with worry. I search for a quartet in the town of my people, but find no one but a desperate boy pointing to my cello, which I hold onto belly down. It is my father as a boy. Who knows how, in the half-light morning hours, people see what they long for. In this shadow world, there is no father, just the slight weight of his memory, the human moan of my cello, the ghostly groan seeking 4 chairs for a chamber, a night song to hold me alone in this new republic. I am homesick. I do not know where home is, but a faraway music holds my attention. The adagio I played years ago while father sat for hours in his chair and hummed. An impressive audience, enough to fill the town, sits atop the moving trains, fanning themselves with their top hats and berets. On cue, we open with an effortless adagio for strings, whose middle passages initiates a slight dynamic change to andante. Now listeners hold their hats, hours pass, but they don't stir until dusk with the roused allegretto, when they animate as though suddenly wound up, throwing carnations, shouting bravos. My father sits beside me, playing his violin. We play on, losing ourselves in the dry earth. We are part of the earth's decor, our swaying bodies polished in the next sun, our tears pooling at the small scratch of a wood. We have no worries. Penniless, not broken, we move from town to town, appearing suddenly out of the dust. The same trains stand on their tracks. The same people wait as if to preserve the heartbeat. Ah, Mozart, man of loose buttons, the flustered nerve of the world, taking up most of the sky. Con affetto, with emotion. Two more poems, and this penultimate one is for my son. It's a form that has 9 syllables, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then there's a mirror, and it goes backwards, upside down. So it repeats itself. It's called A Form of Gratitude. Once you were my hallelujah boy. I held my breath and your heart swelled. God's mirror fogged at your mouth. Our marrow purpled bright. Now I sleep standing, inventing ways to hold your shivered heart shivered to hold your inventing ways. Now I sleep standing, our marrow purpled bright. God's mirror fogged at your mouth. I held my breath and your heart swelled. Once you were my hallelujah boy. Thank you again before I end with my last poem. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everyone who's out there. Thank you, Allegra. Can't see you, but thank you so much. The last poem is a persona poem in the voice of Frida Kahlo. Most of you know her as the great artist and communist, lover of Trotsky, wife of Diego Rivera, who had a major trolley accident. And this is called El Pecero. El Pecero was a bus from, maybe the 1900s to early 60s in Mexico City that cost 1 peso. And so everyone could afford it. And this is where the accident happened. El Pecero, and the voice of Frida. I was plumage and filigree, each part of me uncharted. I was the last stone of the day. I was 3 streets down from a liturgy. Arcos y árboles held me up to the traffic of trolleys y coches. I was gold, a bounty, lifting my dress to my knees, boarding the Pecero, inching toward the back seats alive with violets. Faldas billowing from the small waists of the 3 girls standing in the aisle. Alejandro and I grabbing the handrails, running across the ceiling, picking at the sweet galletas my mother had baked that morning. The roads narrow and pocked with holes, the clickety-click of the bus puffing its way toward Coyoacán. Everything, everyone moving with a dull, slow speed. The passengers suddenly tipping off their benches, falling one on top of the other. And the handrail I held onto gave in. It was upside down of everything with flesh floating, flimsy orchids torn from stalks, cabbages, sweet manzanas, flores amarillas, broken parts of boys and babies, the sky unhinged as arms and scarlet wings, a trinity of girls glided out a window. Bits of steel moved through me, a colony of broken bones sired by a trolley. My spine, mis costillas, pelvis, right foot, the bleeding that could not yet be seen. That rod through me, and a sound like nothing I could name came from me when a stranger pulled from my body a piece of the bus. There was lightning and fire. I was forever subpoena. My back, my bed, my back, mi vida. And that is how I made my way. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Carine. Your poetry is loving, compassionate, elegiac. It's enchanting. It has great clarity, a love of family. And it also contains gratitude and breath and heart and celebration of life. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Harry. Thank you.
When did you write your first poem?
When I was 15, I wrote my first poem. My first.
Now, what is it that attracts you to the poetry form?
Well, I never thought of myself as a academic when I was younger. And I was always musing in my head. And I was impatient as a kid. So for me, it was a perfect form. It wasn't quite the haiku, but I was a little more patient than that. So I just found, my parents bought me a book by Dylan Thomas, and they bought me a record, the long playing record. I heard his voice, and it was music. It was celebration. And then I started reading his poetry while listening to his albums, and he was singing. It was something I didn't know that one could do. So I started copying his work, and everything was sounding, S's and whooshes, and it was dreadfully Dylan Thomas, but he really pushed me along. I was spitting every poem that I read of his, but it got me started. And then I started reading others. But Dylan Thomas, I saw films. I bought records, his books, the biographies, whatever I could get to learn about him. So,
when you write a poem, what do you focus on when you begin? Is it an image, an emotion, a phrase?
It's probably a phrase. I have a book that I call like a word pool book, and it has bits of words or conversation or words that I love whose meaning I don't know, ideas. So I'll just, if it's a dry season, I'll just open the book and I'll find something. Or when I'm playing music, I have an idea. I'll sit down and I start to rock and, I move. For me, writing is very movement oriented. So I'll start, something will happen.
Do you rewrite much?
I do. I think I've had maybe 4 or 5 poems, maybe a hand of poems that's come out of nowhere. And sometimes I don't even consider them mine because I didn't put in the effort that I usually put in rewriting. But I do a lot of rewrites.
I love the love of your family that you have and your empathy for others and for the other. And it's just really an enchanting poetry reading that you just gave us. So, and I love the gravitas in your poetry too. There's really so much depth in your writing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Harry.
Dream.
Really appreciate it. My pleasure.
Our next poet is Beth Ruscio. Beth Ruscio is the author of Speaking Parts 2020, winner of the Brick Road Poetry Prize, and her work's been widely anthologized, most recently in Dark Ink, Poetry Inspired by Horror. She's been Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominated and won finalist honors for the Wilder Prize, the Sunken Garden Poetry Prize, the Tupelo Quarterly Prize, and the 2 Sylvia's Prize. A professional actor for 50 years, Ruscio has graced local and national stages, and her work can be seen on screens large and small. She is currently in rehearsal for 2 plays. In one, she plays the painter Alice Neal. In the other, a small-town Bayou mother grappling with loss. Her most recent publication credits an essay in praise of humble ingredients, Exalted, and a poem, Summer Calling, which appear in Outlaw Theater October 2022 by Padua Playwrights Press. Beth Ruscio is a chameleon in her poetry and her acting. Her poetry is personal, poignant, transformative. She has great vitality, a great ear, and an excellent use of language. Beth astounds me with what she sees, remembers, and writes. She also cares deeply for her fellow poet. She's a blessing. Here's a magnificent poet, Beth Ruscio.
Oh gosh, Harry. I hope I can live up to that biography. Excuse me. Thank you so much. I loved your reading so much, Carine. You know how much I love you and your work. You set the bar high, my friend. All right, so it's Mother's Day coming up, so I'm going to begin with a couple of poems from my book. Reclamation. My arms full of washed out peanut butter jars and other pampered recyclables. I'm mistaken for a mother by the trash man, although I may also be mistaken, for he is immaculate, appearing on the running board of a steamy blue truck on a Friday. Happy Mother's Day, he proclaims buoyantly, his voice raspy from talking over the grind of gears, a dirty job, hauling everyday empties away. And in return, he's joy, the kind of minister, unsullied. I don't correct him. Over my pans and jars. I scrub them till they gleam like it's the first day of school. There's a great film by Laurie Anderson where I think it's called Heart of a Dog. And she talks about a Buddhist a Buddhist problem, a Buddhist quest. And I used it to write this poem. And the teaching is in the title. All beings have been your mother. Winston scented and coffee breathed, bags under her eyes, fatigued beyond the reach of Excedrin, 4 children in 5 years. This was my mother. An old 7, I got stomach aches over how she'd ever manage. I washed dishes, I made my bed. Out of clay, I put together miniature inedible meals, peas and carrots, drumsticks. But I didn't know sewing. I had to have a choir robe to be in 2nd grade chorus, white, like angel's clothes, long to my ankles. Without a white angel robe with a bow at the neck, I'd flunk choir. The next day, in front of the blackboard, a rack of official choir robes, exiled to a hook on the back wall of the classroom, Mom's version, fashioned from Dad's old shirt, which looked like a homemade ghost. I'd gotten the facts wrong. She stayed up all night. It made her sick all the next day. It killed her 50 years later. What did I know? In high school, my debate partner, Doug, was my mother. On the sly, he taught me how to drive his dad's car. Caught heck when I almost rolled it. Took the blame. Made me believe I could someday be a good driver. On filthy streets cracked with cold, a lady lived on cardboard, retrieved broken lipsticks from trash cans, stabbed color on her cheeks. Hadn't she been my mother? Singing that lullaby when I pressed dollar bills into her hand. Sleigh bells ringing in the snow. From one of my lovers, I caught the infection that locked off my womb. From some other girl, he caught it, and she from some other guy. All those lovers were my mothers. In other lifetimes, I was theirs. This scout ant crossing my yellow kitchen counter, a search party of one, looks for sustenance. I was of her tribe. She made an angel robe for me once. You can only get so clean. Saturdays and the cadence of orderliness, of spick and span and Swiffers erasing lived-in mess. I catch the last hour of leaving Las Vegas while I dust. Nicolas Cage succeeds at drinking himself to death. Different demons, but I recognize sick, felt punished enough to surrender that mad dash over a cliff. All of it transpired in secret, transgressing while self-possessing, daring the knife's edge, running on shaking legs. The loneliest part, I was good at it. I opened the windows on this stale room, my mothballed lair. This habit of abandon makes a mess I'm getting to later. I live in Reseda now, and we are more close to wildlife here than any other place. I've lived in LA, which has been a long time living in LA, maybe 35 years. So these two poems concern not exactly wildlife, but you'll see. Starts out with a little pet, but you'll find that out when you hear the poem. Forced perspective. The woman in yellow at the end of the block looks very tall. She's a rain slicker on a drought day, moving, not committed to forward, while a tiny, what is that? Sets the pace. She's looking back now, stopping now. They're in a game of statues. I do not know them, but cannot tear myself away from this watching their mostly frozen gait. The woman clicks her tongue, wields an invisible leash for a handful of dryer lint propelled by low-flying butterfly breeze. Who is this pack of cards in fur? The woman, patient as a grandmother, may also be reckless, for she picks up the smallest real dog on earth and places into my roomy palm this runt she's calling Minnie, who curls into a C. Her trust disarms, then transfixes the coyote in me. My sister doesn't live in Reseda, but she lives in the Hollywood Hills, and there's a picture of P22, whatever his number was, in her backyard. So this is about another lion, or maybe his sister. Nights numbered. A mesmerizing grace, the sway and slink of her, the lioness, and between us, a watering hole. She lopes this way, lowering her massive golden face to the water, clocking my presence, not looking into my camera's lens. She is free. She and her wild nonchalance. Her future slayers, loud and overarmed, will be back. She laps and yawns, unshaken, her mane wet, drinking moonlight. This next poem I haven't read for a while, but I suddenly realized that Harry and Carine and I might all have been in New York City at the time of this poem. It was when the thriller from Manila, which was the fight between Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, was happening. And I was working in a restaurant that was within walking distance from Madison Square Garden, and they were showing the fight on closed circuit TV in those days. So it was October 1975, and I'm sending this all to you, Carine, and to you, Harry, and to all of Carine's New York people, and any of mine. Ringside at the Brass Rail, 1975, and it starts with this epigraph: "The one who fights with brute strength alone is going to lose." Mike Tyson. They come from the fights, this couple. Man's got a huge fro. He's in wide lapels over maroon polyester. Lady's fallen out of a lilac sleeveless jumpsuit. Purple half moons of sweat under her armpits. She's got a fresh, fat lip. They sit in my section, the booth for 5. He orders 2 sirloins, still mooing, and bring the lady some ice. Who won? I have to ask. She'd been for Joe Frazier, The loser, by technical knockout, still steamed. They stopped it after only 14 rounds. She takes a napkin, puts in the ice, cups it to her face, and says, even with his eyes swole shut, Joe jumps up for more. I don't know. If that's not heart. And then she slowly shakes her proud merry head. Each time I come back to the table with her next Manhattan, his cutty on the rocks, she wants more. Texas toast, a new A1, extra butter, chives. And he says, give the lady whatsoever she needs. Presses a $20 bill into my hand, the same way my aunt would slip me mad money, because a girl should always have her own in case she has to run. I'm 20. I've got 3 weeks New York City waitressing under my belt. And the eldest daughter, I make a good servant, shouldering plates loaded with dinosaur steaks and jumbo shrimp cocktails, anticipating needs before they spoke, feeding fuck-ups the consolation of a little service. I'm not tough like that. To take a right cross in stride? Nope. The lady chews with her mouth open on account of the lip, the white tablecloths pocked with steak sauce spit. But as the night wears on, she looks healed. The last time I filled her water, she sprawled back in the red booth, smiling at her with all his teeth, clucking over what a beautiful job she's doing. What a clean plate. That's a little New York from 1975.
Yeah, we were there. Were you there, Harry? 1975?
I was there working on Taxi Driver.
I was going to say.
Oh,
Harry was making the movie.
Everybody needs to know that on the webinar.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to know.
Oh, Harry is a famous actor.
Harry was in the
He's done
movies.
many Martin Scorsese movies, among other things. All right, let's see. How can I recover from that poem? Okay, I'm going to read. I'm going to read another poem from my book. This is I'm just going to read it. Falling, failing like that. Falling, failing like that. Push off the high board, shove off the landing, down the elevator shaft. That same jolt when a foot doesn't account for a sudden valley. The sinking feeling in the stomach's pit just beyond the roller coaster's crest. Descent into that shifty stretch of quicksand, gleaming slick of La Brea tar. Blackout, as in shooting to death's door. The grammar of danger in the color of ice. Frozen clear, frozen cloudy, frozen milky green, frozen blue, as in breaking through and slipping under, as in swimming farther out than heart can carry you back, as in curtains, done for, the thrash of ending, the look in your eyes the last time I saw your eyes, this widening absence of upsway, sinking, falling, failing all along. What was that look? Last look entrusted to me like a secret. Is that this pull, this dire force, as if dragging you, your hands gripping me like a door jamb, as if a stronger me could wrench you back? When I was in college, everybody had a copy of this book on their steamer trunk coffee tables, along with The Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys from Traffic and Ziggy Stardust from David Bowie. And the book was we called it The Be Here Now. And that's the title of this poem, Be Here Now. And I should also say that the occasion of writing this poem was I went to my high school reunion in a very small town in Iowa, Denison, Iowa. And then we went to an even smaller town outside of Iowa where my friend was from, Carine. And this is for my friend, Vicky. Be here, and sorry, so much I'm explaining. This is a form called a pantoum. You're going to hear a lot of repetition. Be here now. We take the rural route out, away from our class reunion. Fields of autumn dried corn stalks in a sudden graveyard. Now we're here, away from our class reunion. An incongruous headstone garden, a sudden graveyard. We're here now. In the trunk, Vicky keeps an incongruous headstone garden, a spray bottle, a rag, a soft hand brush. In the trunk, Vicky keeps her kit, just sweet and tidy. Spray bottle, rag, soft brush, the graves of her mother and dad. She sweeps and tidies. They died nearly the same day, her mother and dad, 20 years apart on the headstone. Death dates nearly the same, plus her still breathing brother's names, 20 years apart on that headstone, but not her name. She cleans her breathing brothers, plus to the left where some cousins lie, but not Vicky. She cleans someone's twins, 2 days old, left of where some cousins lie. Quiet. We imagine that funeral. Whose twins? 2 days old? It's a very small town. Quiet. Imagine that funeral. She knows or is related to everyone. It's this small town. Far from here, I live in a big city. She's related to everyone here. She talked me into coming from far, the big city I live in. My grievances evaporated once I was here. She talked me into it in the graveyard with the wind so soft. Grievances evaporate here and nostalgia comes easy. I could never live in the graveyard with the wind so soft, here, lying in this placid yard. Easy, nostalgia. I couldn't live here. She's thought a lot about where she ends up, never lying in a placid yard. She's read we die with our eyes open. She's thought she'll end up in a handful of small urns. She could still travel, dying with her eyes open. I let this serene scene imprint. A handful of small urns traveling. You can live all over the world, letting serene scenes imprint, being here now, then there. We could live all over the world. Fields of autumn dried corn stalks, being here now and there. You take the rural route out. In Harry's introduction, he talked about the play that I was rehearsing. I did the play where I played the mother from the Bayou, the Elaine Heilvold play called Nighty Night. And this play is called Bose Neal, about the two portrait painters, Cecilia Bose and Alice Neal. And I'm playing Alice Neal. And here's a poem that I wrote about her. She's a woman after my own heart. She painted and painted. She painted her heart out. And she was not known until she was my age. So she painted a good long time before anyone recognized her, but it didn't stop her. She had walls just lined with paintings leaning up against the hallway. And it begins with an epigraph from her. I go so out of myself and into them that when they leave, I feel like an untenanted house. Alice Neal. Out into. She invites them and their curiosity into her as she empties to make room. They move in. She's sentenced again, intends to get lost. Instead of jumping out the window to follow them out the door. Painting, she erases herself from the room, hidden as the seams of wallpaper, her hands never not stained or wholly occupied. In the right, grasped like a bristling bouquet, all her brushes, while her left commits in bold black the outlines of the body in front of her, as if to caress, gentle, perhaps, sure. And in the silences, she closes the space between and with her sitters. At arm's length, she can see every pore, even the fully closed must feel X-ray seen. As she color washes, fixes light, giddy sacraments of paint, a consuming thrall to color, the chill Baker Miller pink up against a jolt of cobalt violet, and they materialize on canvas. She portrays, in the thick of the rat race, suffering all that goes on, life. They look directly into her, and now she's a single nervous system in a brush in her hand, a conductor's baton, not music, but music. I'm going to close. When the invasion of Ukraine started, I found myself writing and imagining what was happening over there in Ukraine. And I started a series of poems called the Ghost Light Poems. A ghost light is traditionally a light they leave in the middle of the stage when they're going to leave the theater. It's essentially it's like, it means hope that light will come back to the darkened theater. But it also, I suppose, is light that the ghosts can see by. This poem takes place in the basement of a theater in Mariupol. And it's not fact, it's my imagination, but it is. Suspended disbelief. Rex strafed Earth Mother Courage had just closed. The company was all here, doling out a useful what the hell world weariness. You can do without virtue, but not bread. To the eternal night of backstages, the actors were accustomed. Easily, their eyes adjusted to the bowels of a space they knew over many seasons. Its shadows, its hiding places, knew just how to find the comfortable positions, used to waiting, living for their moments. This, their home. On this frightful day, where was their fright? The townspeople wanted to know. These actors in this crisis, cool. How? In lush piles, red Lyonnais curtains absorbed the loudest shelling, reduced it to dull thuds, felt more than heard. Barrage of splintered steel crashing into broken glass. Every jolt startled them all over again. Down here, quiet was the commodity most dear. Youngest in the troupe, actress with the supple hands, she'd learned sign language for her mute character, Katrin, and so offered up her art, the phrasing in gestures, iPhone screen propped up as illumination. She gave a silent show. Her hands shaped the words, I will now play for you. And then she conjured a violin out of thin air, mimed the heft of its neck in her left hand, the fingers on the frets, imaginary bow in her right she held so delicately, and closing her eyes, played with such conviction they believed in its mournful notes, could write out each cacophony above, as below she folded explosions into the score, pausing mid-flourish, then in defiance of the over-elaborate tempo of war, her strokes grew more legato, evanescent as the last dreams of morning. Transported outside themselves, they'd been taken inside a most exquisite ache. And for the length of this private concert, the audience was no longer the enemy's captives, but willingly became hers.
Wow.
Thank you, Beth, for that entrancing reading. You have so much warmth, and your poetry has so much precision, intimacy, and narrative strength, as well as excellent use of language. And one phrase that came to me was an emotional melody. You know, just the way that you moved through the poem, that was just so lovely. And you have so much care for the other. And you know, we're out of time. I just wanted to say that as you two were reading, I thought, you know, without poetry, my home is empty.
Oh.
And you have filled up my home with our home, MPTF, you know, with so much great poetry it's really abundant. So I really appreciate both of you, your work, and also your care for each other and for all of us, for the other, if you will. And so it's really been a wonderful pleasure. So thank you, Beth Ruscio, and thank you, Carine Topal.
Thank you,
Thank
Harry.
you, Harry
Thank you,
Northup.
Beth.
Thank you, Motion
everybody.
Picture and Television Home.
It was wonderful.